Right, hi, how's it going, guys? We've got a HP, sorry, not a Lenovo at all, HP G6 laptop on the desk tonight. It's already had some repair. It's had a keyboard replaced, and it's had some solid state drive put in. It's a refurb keyboard, as you can see, but to be honest, with a laptop of this age, we're not going to spend an awful lot of money on it, refurbishing it. It was given to us as in exchange for doing some work on a better laptop, so it was a sort of a free part exchange. We're obviously intending to resell it, but at pretty low cost. So the main things that were wrong with it were the keys weren't registering, so we've had to replace the membrane keyboard with a refurbished one off eBay. We've put in a brand new 250 gig solid state drive. Because every laptop should have a solid state drive now. There's no question the price they are. We can pick up 250 gig solid state drives for about £23, which I think it's worth bumping £23 onto any refurb machine, if that's the case. But what we did notice is we did all this install, and this is why I think this video might be interesting, is we noticed the fans were running really fast, seeming to be in line with CPU load, but they were spinning up way sooner than you would expect. They did eventually come back down when you left it to idle, but then as soon as you open a browser, they spun back up again. These AMD A4 processors are not, no powerhouse, but they really shouldn't be generating heat just browsing the web to the point where you're going to get an excessive fan spin. So, if you have got a laptop and it is loud, this is the sort of process you might want to go through. We're going to strip it down, reapply some thermal paste. I'll try and get as much of this on camera as I can. I'm pretty new to recording this stuff. We're going to strip the laptop right down, get some thermal paste on it, and away we go. You'll find that on almost any laptop, the actual process of stripping down to get to the cooler, whilst it has varying stages and it can be of varying complexity, it's fairly similar. You've on this laptop, we'll see now, you've got a panel here that is that covers the memory and the user serviceable parts. Once that's out, once your battery's out, once your optical drive has been slid out, there'll be a screw here somewhere holding it in. You can then take out the remaining screws here, and then you'll usually, it does vary again, you'll usually pop the keyboard out as well. There'll be a set of screws under there, and that'll allow you to separate the case, and that's how you'll get down to the main board. And once you've got the main board out, or you're in that at that point, you should be able to get access to the main CPU cooler. So I'm just gonna switch off from my lovely face and go to camera only. So hopefully this will go well. I don't know how much talking I'll be able to do all the way through this, but let's give it a go. I'll try and give instruction as I go. So the first thing we're gonna do is take off the rear panel, which again, sometimes these screws are retained, which is very nice when they are. If they're not, that's what we've got magnetic mats there for, so that we can maintain the pattern of screws. Surprisingly important. I mean, I can probably get away with not doing it, but I'll live to regret it. We're going to take out the memory modules, because we are really doing complete strip down, which means that there's not going to be anything left in here. So we've got antenna cables here. Hopefully you can see that on camera. They always hooked into the Wi-Fi card, and they just pop off if you want to be really careful. I wouldn't tug them off, but tug them off. But pull. Maybe use a plastic spudger if you're not confident, or you don't have a Wi-Fi card to replace it with. I have a bucket full of them, so what's the worst that can happen, eh? We've got the Kingston SSD that we put in here. This one's just fixed in by rubber. Interesting thing with SSDs, I mean, you can tell me this is bad workmanship if you want, but with a modern SSD, it doesn't really need securing by any more than some rubber or some tape. I mean, putting the complicated hard drive brackets back into some of these laptops is a waste of time. You just don't need to. Now I'm just going to see, so you can see here again, I probably can't easily, I'll see if I can get a zoom on it. No, I'm not going to be able to. You can see that there's a CD drive logo by this. Anyway, maybe if I get a 4K overhead cam, you'll be able to zoom in on the video and figure that out. I don't quite have my setup right. Once you take that out, you'll find that usually the disk drive slides out. Apparently in this case the front of the disk drive just comes off, which is great. So kind of odd that happens. You can normally find the back of it, and it's just what it was doing there is it was sometimes happens, it was catching on the trim at the front. So with any luck, it doesn't look like the drive tray is damaged. So front thing, there you go, just pops back on. They clip on. If you break a clip on them, they can be a pain. You can usually get the trim off eBay if you break one. That's important, but can't have it all going well. Now we'll see here that there are main body screws. You've almost always got one in each of the four corners. I always work on a laptop with the battery towards the back. Personal preference, because I remember that if I do it that way, let's use the mini Mac, because why not? If I do it that way, I'll always know which way around the Mac is supposed to be. Sounds a bit anal, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes if I take all the screws out of a laptop and I notice that they're all the same, I'll just stick them in a tub, because who cares? But you know, there are so many laptops where there's just slight differences. Very rarely harmful. There's a few notable exceptions, like I think I've never done it myself, but there's an Apple Mac that has long screw issues, or was it an iPhone? I can't remember, where if you screwed the wrong thing in, the screw goes straight through the body. And I do actually have another repair on the bench, where the poor kid who used to own the laptop before selling it super cheap to me, he had clearly put long screws in all the holes, and managed to screw them straight through the top case, which means that by the touchpad and around the touchpad there are actual holes in the top deck that I'll never be able to repair. So that laptop will go on sale cheap. It needs a new battery. It costs 20 quid as well, so it's not an ideal repair, to be honest. You see some of the underneath ones are often marked with a little logo of a keyboard. Sometimes it says K. Where would that be? That's somewhere in the middle there. What those are is obviously they secure the keyboard from the underside. You do want to make sure that you get as many of those, all of those out, because otherwise you've got a good chance of breaking the keyboard when you try to remove it, which is probably the next step. Just trying to not do anything rash, because I haven't dismantled many computers on camera before. So the next step now is, ordinarily you would then look at taking off the keyboard. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that there's a, let's use a very, very thin pick and just see. That's not going to do it. I'm not entirely convinced that there are any body. Now, when you take a keyboard out, this is why I say it's important to try and get all the underneath screws, because if you don't, you could get it stuck. And I'm feeling around here, it's not very happy coming out, but I really don't see a screw there. So let's just pull. And that's one of the things, I mean, people sort of say, you know, experience versus being new. I mean, you know, if you pull too hard on the keyboard and you haven't gotten all the screws, you're going to break it. And then you're going to have to buy a keyboard. It's going to cost you £15–20. And then where's your profit? Now this, I'm just using this WD-40 switch cleaner, fast drying contact cleaner. It is not just WD-40, which would make everything horrendously greasy. Use that or alcohol. I find this stuff's good because it gets rid of sticky, which is quite nice, and it does dry. It does leave a very slight residue, but well, what are you going to do? It's electrical. So under here, as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws. So I was absolutely right. So what I'll do is, you can see these mats. I will start a top mat. just doing that square because it's you can't really go wrong. It's very rare that you're going to have. Don't drop the keyboard. Just put that out of the way. It's very rare that you're going to have multi-screw sizes on the sub keyboard deck. The keyboard, well, the screws that go top down, in my experience, they're almost always the same size. So it's just a number of them. What you can have a problem with sometimes is that there are holes here that are not in use. So that can sometimes be a bother. But let's see. So once you've undone that, what you want to do, we can probably... Traditionally, I would say take out all ribbon cables because we know what's going to separate. Yeah, that's just peachy. Thank you, ribbon cable. So that's the sealing clip of that ribbon cable. Oh, and fantastic. I think that's actually torn the ribbon. Yay. Well, that's fantastic. So, I don't know. That could be... No, actually, it's only plastic. I can see that the ribbon, there's no strip there. Okay, we got lucky. Basically, the blue tab that allows you a little bit of extra rigidity when you're pushing these into there. The blue tab broke off, and I don't think I was doing anything particularly. Some people sort of say, oh, do everything with tweezers really carefully. I do this quite a lot, and you wouldn't normally see the blue tab break off. And in taking off, it has actually taken a tiny chunk off the side of the ribbon. So that's going to make things a bit weird, and I'm not 100% happy, but we'll see. What it will do is it'll mean I'll have to be very careful how I seat that. Because now not only is it not quite as rigid, but also it has the possibility of sitting further to the left, and then the touchpad won't work. So what I'm probably going to do is get that seated and tape it, because there's not much else we can do to repair that. That's one of those ones. Good one to catch on camera, because, hey, if all repair was easy, everybody would do it, right? And most of this stuff is really, really easy. So, now then, so we've taken out, double checking because I got sidetracked by that ribbon. Yeah, we've taken out everything. So, turn it over. Laptop's getting really light now because there's nothing in it anymore. Okay, it seems like the separation is between the deck here. Or is it here? Oh, there we go. Now, the best way to separate a laptop deck, I mean, there's probably better ways actually, but the best way for me is you insert a flat metal tool like this. Obviously, if you're disconnected from everything, and you've got, no battery or anything, and then I just twist it. So I put it in because twists tend to just flex it enough. Now, other people like to use picks, and I do that for phones and iPads and stuff, but I don't see much need in using a pick for something as a... So I need a rubber mat for here. Okay, so what I've found is that it's a little bit resistant on this corner. And I mean, I suppose if there's one tip I'd give to people who are disassembling laptops, it's be aware when something isn't right, So I mean, this laptop, we are getting some real weird problems actually, because I've just noticed now that there is a crack in the bezel down the bottom of the screen that I didn't notice before. I'm missing a piece of plastic, and that was literally absolutely nothing to do with what we've just done, so that's a bit of a pain. I'm thinking there is a screw here. If there's ever a screw that's a bit suspect for you, take it out and put it with top deck screws. See, that one's a different length as well. So there it was. See, what the hell is the point in that? Okay, we do have to remove the speaker cable. You can always tell a speaker cable because it's a 4-wire or sometimes 2-wire plug but it's never a ribbon, or very rarely a ribbon. And it looks very different. They're normally ones you have to be pretty careful disassembling. So, okay, I would call that a largely medium successful opening of a computer. I would not expect half of those problems. So again, quite good to get those on video, because you don't want to see a perfect repair. What's the point? It'll put you off when you do it, and these sort of things go wrong. Now, this crack in the screen bezel over here is just not going to be repairable. Now, if this was an expensive laptop, we do have things like a black epoxy plastic filler that we could use, which is a sort of up to you whether you think that's a good thing to use. I find that it's sometimes worth it if you know, even with an expensive laptop, sometimes buying parts of the case. This is a front trim off a HP G6. It's almost certainly cheap to get. But then if we spend £10 getting one of those off eBay, are we ever getting any money back on this this laptop? I don't know is the answer. So I'll probably not bother, and I'll probably just factor it into the sale. Now, we've got a display cable at the back. I do generally take a little bit of extra care with display cables. If you break them, I mean, if you're dealing with a second-hand laptop, it's game over. If it's a customer's laptop, you're probably having to buy them another one. So we've taken out a ribbon over here. We've taken out what looks like one of the optical drive connectors, or maybe the hard drive connector. It looks like a SATA. You can see it has some of the telltale SATA shape down there. And that's about it. There's probably a few connectors on the other side of the board, but that's where we're at now. So now we're on to stage 3, which is motherboard removal. Now, you'll find in most laptops you're only looking for maybe one screw. And the really good thing, and this is probably the tip I wish I'd had years ago disassembling laptops, is that there's a little triangle pointing to screws that are in use, which is handy, because what you've got to remember is that 90% of these points, probably more than 90%, all of these points are they're screw throughs. So the screw from the case, either top or bottom, is going straight the way through those. So if you don't know which one to put it, what you'll end up doing is putting the laptop completely back together, only to find that one of the screw holes is blocked by a screw on the inside. So once you get all that in, you can usually start to prise up the motherboard. Now again, I'm going to make a possibly controversial statement here. They're not as fragile as you think. They're fragile, but they're not as fragile as you think. So all we've got left, I didn't actually see this guy down here, is the power cord. So if you've got a daughter board on the side, or you've got a power connector like we do here, looks like it's been hot glued back in. How weird! This must have had repairs before. Then you'll have one of those going into the board. But I mean, I think if you don't repair a lot of laptops, it's very daunting to take a cooler and everything apart, and it doesn't need to be. This is not much different, and this is all very tough. This is not super fragile. The fragile bits are these ribbon cables, which again, worst case, we might have a problem with that touchpad one, but I believe, if we look, where did I put the deck? Okay, so it's for the touch buttons by the looks of it. Or it could be both, because it looks like it feeds. But if you look here, this is the one we've got trouble with. And down here, if you look, it's just a relatively simple solder setup. So, I mean, I know that a lot of people will be like, oh man, that's soldered to the motherboard. Oh God, I'm doomed if I break that. It's like, no, you're not. Get a soldering iron, you pleb. This is not complicated soldering. So if you needed to solder one of these onto there, you 100% could. You don't even have to, it's buried under here, you don't even have to do a tidy job of it. You could basically take a ribbon, strip it back until you had nice contacts, and then just put solder on it. I mean, you could probably tape the damn thing, but anyway. So I'm just saying, like, if this does prove to be knackered, we could replace this board, fine. But we could just replace the ribbon. And replacing the ribbon, you got to realise you could, you could just do that with another ribbon from around. In fact, if you look, there's actually some slack in this. We could trim it, So yeah, I don't think we're going to have to do that, because I think we can just work with what we've got. But I'm just pointing out that damaging a ribbon cable can be an absolute disaster. But not in most cases. So, right, can't see as well, I'm sorry, my key light battery died. Could have got a main powered key light. So I'm going to spray WD-40 through this cooler. And then I'm going to get a paintbrush. You know, actually, if I'm honest, should have paintbrushed it first. Same difference. Don't tell anyone. I'm a professional. Right. Okay, right, well, there we go. Not such a big deal. So now we're on to undoing the... Again, I'll tell you what, let's do it. Fix up, put that down. Let's put this on the bench. Now, again, I should probably be on a silicone repair board or something, because if nothing else, I might mess up my lovely wooden surface here. But, right, so some people will do all kinds of fancy, you know, undoing the head gasket on a bloody old aluminium engine type, you know, only take one bolt 3/4 turn out at a time and all that. Truth is, just don't relieve all the tension on one side just in case. But the pressures on these are never enough to crack dies and things like that. So just, you know, whatever, be sensible. Again, what I tend to do with these plugs, because you'll see a lot of people, especially on YouTube, telling you, oh, use tweezers for everything. It's like, yeah, definitely, and I've definitely broke plugs I wish I hadn't. But when you're wiggling them with the wires, try and see whether it looks like the... I'll try and see if I can get this on camera. You know, where the wires go in... This is never going to focus. Where the wires go into the plastic plug, see if that's wiggling. Because if that's wiggling, the plug isn't wiggling. You're going to pull them out, you're going to break the thing, it's going to be a pain to repair, or you're going to have to replace it. If the plug is wiggling, it's just going to come out. Just take it slow. Now then. Now, again, WD-40, cracking stuff. And I also found a great tip is that I got this stuff all over my Secret Labs chair, which had the PU leather, because I'm not a rich person who can afford real Italian leather for £1 million more. And I was a bit worried because I got thermal grease on it, and it sort of seemed to stain. I tried wet wiping it, I tried using leather cleaner, nothing worked. So eventually I thought, well, do you know what? This is going to be a work chair anyway, so I'm not going to stress too much. And I sprayed it with this contact cleaner. Not 100% sure that it was going to, whether it was going to damage it or what. And it came straight off and didn't damage anything. So if anybody needs to know if you can use it on safely on PU leather on an expensive gaming or office chair, the answer is yes. Now, a lot of people might wince at me using a microfiber on a CPU die, but let's be honest, this is not performance kit. As you can see, these modular CPUs were actually still removable. Most are not these days. You stick a slot screwdriver in there, twist it, and you could pop that out and you could put in probably a much faster one. But of course, you know, you've got bespoke cooling. We're having cooling issues anyway. So, treat with care. Now then, some MX4 thermal grease. Guess I was thinking of that convertible hairdresser's drive. This stuff, oh man, geez, professional, see, messy. You don't need much of it on a laptop, but don't get obsessive about it like the internet does. Okay, it's non-conductive, which means you 100% can get it on, you know, components. It won't cause a short. You shouldn't have too much of it. There's no need. You only need a blob. I've probably put way too much on there, and I'll be honest about that. But it's going to be fine because we just needed fresh thermal paste. Then we just got to line these screws up. And we'll go about halfway in on two corners, and then halfway in on the other two corners, and then we'll just go all the way in, because that's a good night. There we go. There we And you've got to remember with these things, once they're screwed in, they've all been machined to the right tolerances. There's nothing complicated about any of this. All we've done is we've made the conductivity better into the heat pipe, and the heat pipe is now, you know, going to be cooled as well as possible. Don't forget to plug the fan back in, because I literally looked at that just now and went, oh, fan's unplugged. No fucking shit, Sherlock. Right, and there we are. So once you've got that in, it is a case simply of a tiny little spider on my desk that I believe came out of a laptop. They like living in laptops, they do. I'll tell you what, one more job. As you can see, this has a grill down here, and it is caked in dust. The best way I find is, again, a little bit of spray. WD-40 get a lot of money out of me. Well, Screwfix do. That's where I always go to buy the damn stuff. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but I think you can see, you can get it nice and clear. I probably should have showed you before I did that, but it wasn't very clear. So get it nice and clear. I mean, everything you can do. This is the sort of stuff when you're refurbishing a laptop. This stuff is free, man. This is free. I mean, it costs you time, but, you know, this is stuff that doesn't need to be a problem. So you always want to go in with the I/O side first, okay? So I/O side is going to be your VGA ports, your audio ports, because they're pronounced. They've got to slot into the holes, then the laptop's got to drop down. And you can see I routed these cables. I just made sure that they were all up on top. We've got another ribbon over here, and we've got to, of course, remember this one that we didn't see. That's the power. And I mean, it was always pretty daunting to me in the early days doing laptop repair. Like, where does all this stuff go? You know, I'd been building PCs for a very long time before I did laptops, and PCs seemed so easy because they're so standardized, and laptops were so weird and all over the shop. But it's just the same stuff. It's in different places, but it's the same stuff. I think we're good. What you've got to always remember is that there'll be bits around the edges if you've missed something. So the other things we've got to think about. So what's this guy, right? That's going to be your touchpad connector. We remember that. This fat one's always keyboard. How would that get a bit of Captain tape in there? I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to mess with it. We've got this guy. This is your power switch, because we know the power switch was up in this corner. So we've got the video, plug that guy back in. So we've got the power switch there, so we know that. So we've basically been able to identify everything that we've not plugged in. And we know that they're all yet to be connected, so there's no problem. So once you've got the main board back in, we're going to remember that there was one main board screw. Now, obviously, again, you know, take notes. I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is a magnetic project mat, because you won't be able to see on the camera, but down here, they couldn't spell magnetic. It's just magnetic, which I think is great. And it was about $4.99, and it's wipe clean, so you can write on it. I mean, if you're not confident, or you're doing this on your best ever laptop, you know, you could be more careful than me, but I'm fairly happy, and I wouldn't really give too much of a crap if this laptop never worked again. It's a cheapo refurb, and about a 90% chance it's going to be absolutely fine. Nothing has gone catastrophically wrong in this repair. I'm only possibly slightly worried about that ribbon cable, which we'll find out about shortly. So, okay, we've got everything in there. We put the screw in. That's all in. It's always best to check everything. Even I check everything all the time. Because the last thing you want to do is put a laptop completely back together and find that you're missing something. Now these can be a bit fiddly when you've got a ribbon, especially one now where we've lost the blue bit. Okay, now this one is going to be the interesting one. It's in, and that's tight. But I'll tell you what, there's no way on earth that I am going to leave it untaped, so a little bit of electrical tape on this one. Okay, because I just don't want that moving left or right. It will just make the touchpad unruly. Again, that's just like an in-place belt and braces repair. There's other things you could do. As I said, if it was an expensive laptop, I would 110% be replacing the ribbon, either soldering a new one or replacing the little board it plugs into, because yeah. Now we remember that there was a long screw that went in this weird place that was stopping us opening the laptop, and then we've got our multitude of mini screws. Now I'll be honest, right, probably shouldn't screw it back together. I think as a rule, if I was just sort of casually doing one of these without being on video and wanting to look all clever, I would most likely not screw it back together, because I would want to put it all together, check it turned on, check it booted up, check the touchpad and everything was working. Before doing that, because it's a mug's game to put all the screws back in only to find out you didn't connect something right. What I'm doing here is I'll just try and show you. If this is really mucky, the keyboard itself is actually hideously mucky, and it can be worth just spraying off its connectors, because as I say, it's a non-conductive spray, it's fast drying, it doesn't smell that great, but it doesn't linger, and if you wipe some alcohol over the computer before you give it back to the customer, they won't smell the sort of weird WD-40 smell. There we go, that's looking quite tight. Flipper, chief. How should we go with? I'm going to go battery last, because I don't want that to be. Yeah, to be honest, there's no good reason. I'm going battery last because I'm touching things, and because I know that people on YouTube like to really, really, really warn you about the battery being plugged in and short-circuiting things, and they're probably right, you know. But oh, another point is quite important is antenna cables are quite often numbered. They've either got, this one has got a white arrow and a black arrow, which should mean a white cable and a black cable, which is funny because it's not. But they're also numbered 1 and 2, and there are actually little tags. Number 1, you won't be able to see them from the camera, but the cable actually has little tags 1 and 2. So that's how I knew which order to put those in. And trust me, I never would have thought it if you'd gone back a few years. But yeah, if you don't get those in the right way, things often don't work. So it is actually fairly important with these to just a screw. It is fairly important to get the antenna cables in tidy. You will quite often, a lot of laptops will have brackets that actually hold those cables in, because it's so common for them to pop off in transit. This is an older laptop, so it doesn't. A lot of modern Dells, especially as these have gone a lot smaller in modern laptops, yeah, and you tend to find. So right, we're just going to go through our little order. So I think these weren't actually, were they? They weren't all the right size. So I'm just going to have to guess a little bit. I had things mostly in the right place. There's a couple of little ones though. And now you come to mention it, I don't remember where those little ones were. Were they underneath the hard drive? They might have been. Yes, they were. I remembered them being, you know, in a very unexpected position for a case separation. Now this, there's, again, you probably can't see on camera, I may have to work on the clarity there, but there's a hole there that's not being used. That would have been securing in the hard drive caddy when this was a spinning disk. Some sort of retainer, because you can't have spinning disk drives move all the time. It will break them. So that's all that is. Okay, that one didn't want to bite, but eventually played ball. Oh, look at this. See, this is what has changed most between me doing this in my 20s and me doing this in my 30s. I would, in my 20s, have had an awful lot of screws left over. I'll be honest. Now, even though I don't think it's necessary to put all the screws back in, I tend to. I'm good like that. I feel that I need to be respectful of people's equipment. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes you break it and you go, oh wow, it was a motherboard. But 99% of the time, I'm a good. Eesh. Eesh. Okay, I have no idea if this has any charge, or actually where the charger is, so that could be a problem at this point. We got a light. Are we going to get a boot? We're going to get a boot. Now don't worry everybody, this has not got any customer data on it. This is a clean install from when we replaced the hard drive. Oh, see, G6s. They are not bad when they've got a solid state in them. Not hearing much fan spin, but then they've only just been turned on. Fan is going. We may not have a touchpad. That's great. Well, that's going to be a problem to address. So let's just check there's no touchpad disable. I don't think so. No, I think that ribbon is a problem. Yeah, great. Okay, right, well, let's see if we can do a repair on it. Let's add to the video. Why not say? Where are we at time-wise? Battery on the camera, that's fine. We've been recording for 37 minutes. Cracker, right. And of course the downside with this actual, the HP here, is that I'm going to do a reboot because I'm just going to see if it's a hardware initialization thing, but I doubt it. It's almost certainly going to be that ribbon. I've got a couple of options. I mean, one is that it may not be pressing down, because I think it is centered. I think it's on the right pins, so I don't think that's why. I think it might be the thickness, because you've got this blue piece would add quite a lot of thickness over the top of the cables and would allow for a much better contact. And honestly, contact in laptops is microns thick, so yeah. So yeah, we've still got no mouse. Joy of joys. So let's shut her down. And as I say, never put all the screws back in. Come on, come on. Now the keyboard screws were labelled, so we don't have to do much work. So if we take out any marked keyboard, this one, release there, that's mad. It says release, which I guess would mean, like, I should have actually taken a note when I took the keyboard out of how many screw holes are in the back. I didn't. What I think it's suggesting is that you actually push the keyboard through. I'm gonna do that. That's ridiculous. Seems like a terrible idea. Yep. There was only one. That's fine. We know the keyboard's good anyway. So now we're back inside. And what we're looking at is this little bugger. So this little bugger, he's not happy. He's no bueno. No bueno. So what I'm going to try and do here is I'm just going to try pushing that in. Okay? Because that's what it's meant to do. And that should make it lock a lot better. I'm still going to tape it. I might try taping it lengthways. And at this point, there's no sense in hooking the keyboard back up. Oh, we need the battery though. Sugar. Sugar, in case you didn't know. Welsh for sugar. Because that's where I'm from, Wales. Okay. The good thing is here we can see the fan spin. Now, I'll probably kill the video here if we don't get a repair, and I'll resume it depending on what I do as regards that cable, because I don't know that I can do a lot more for this. Yeah, I don't know. I could glue the broken tab on. This is very strange, if you ask me. I suppose we could check it in software, but I don't see it. I don't see it being a software issue. Very odd. There's not a lot to touchpads. They're honestly not particularly. Let me get tweezers after all my tweezers. I know some of you will be wincing watching me. Yeah, I know some of you will be wincing watching me use tweezers on a live mainboard, but yeah, hey. I'm looking at that and I'm still saying there is no damage. It's just the plastic that's damaged. No, but I can see the alignment problem. You can see it where it's not going to sit right because of the damn ribbon. You know, it probably 100% would work. I don't think it can come back to life while being used. So, as much as I would love that, I think it's like a what's it? It needs to be initialized in the BIOS. Right, so we're going to. Oh, look, a cursor. Still no cursor. I'm just going to check. I suppose Windows X and M. I never can remember Device Manager. X and M. Unknown device update driver. What is that? Yeah, I'm going to find a driver for it on the internet. Let's go on the internet. Have we got internet? Oh, yeah, we got the internet. So just to be clear for the video, because you guys obviously can't really see this, I'm having a check in Device Manager, basically, and looking for any issues there. There is a missing driver in there. It says an unknown device. That could be anything. It says PCI Express root complex, so I don't know. That doesn't sound like a pointing device. I get the feeling that it's got nothing to do with anything. So I'm going to reboot once more and just check this now that I've repositioned it. Because again, you know, it's easy to get bogged down in worried about complexity, but there isn't really anything complex going on here. The touchpad is a, you know, like I said, a 5-pin ribbon. The ribbon has a little bit of damage on one side from where it somehow ripped or broke when we were taking it out. And that does seem to now have led to a lack of touchpad. This will probably have to be the end of this video because I don't think it'll be very interesting to troubleshoot this. I will come back to it because this isn't a client's PC, it's one we're doing for ourselves. I will come back to you with what I end up doing after this point, if it doesn't come back to life. But definitely a weird one. Aha! Touchpad is working. So it was just the alignment. So now I'm going to have to obviously do. So let me just. Well, you'll be able to see because without a keyboard, there's no way I could pull up Start menu. Okay, so I know you can't really see the cursor, but it's working. Okay, so we'll call that the end of this video. All I'm going to do here is secure this properly. So what I'm actually going to probably do is take a little bit of time and take that little blue piece and affix it properly to the ribbon so that it can't so that this doesn't slide around, because that's what's really the problem, is that there's the little tiny bit missing on the left allows the pins to just go left out of alignment. We know it's fine if they're aligned. I don't trust tape to hold this in place forever, and that means that at some point the future user of this laptop, whether they're buying it cheap or not, they still don't deserve a touchpad that's just going to stop working one day when it can be repaired. I mean, obviously there are times where something's going to fall apart one day and you can't help that, and you can, you know, I suppose you can still sell it on in good conscience if you think you've done the best you can. But I think where something like this is the case, where I know exactly what is wrong, I know exactly how to fix it, it's just a matter of spending the extra bit of time doing it, which I have no problem doing. So basically there we go, that's the end of the video. Laptop fully working, cooling system refurbished, which was the key. You can tell right now already that, you know, the fan spin is much quieter than it was, although I don't have a before to show you. By this point the fan would be running very loud in the OS. So anyway, let's shift back to here. So thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully you'll come back for more of these exciting videos. This is the first official one that's going up. It's quite lengthy. I wasn't really anticipating it being quite this long, doing a cooling refurb, but hey, you never know what's going to happen in a computer. Ooh, so excited. So yeah, great. And if anybody out there needs help, we do repair by order, by mail order. We can arrange to have your laptop or PC collected, shipped to us, and repaired if you want. And obviously, if you are local to Ceredigion, you can, on the west coast of Wales there, you can phone me up and we can do on-site repairs, etc. We're covered to work through lockdown. That's great. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.